Okay, things you should know about information sharing. That's also, actually, I think it might be quite good to go through this one again.
Okay.
Because one thing I want to do tonight is have a talk about customers.
Okay. Yeah, we talked. Susie and I talked about this a little bit earlier.
Things you should know about information sharing. If the SIGINT system, which we call the Eye of Sauron, but which they call the global network, were a private company, what would it sell? Historically, their product has been reporting. But crucial as this reporting is, in recent years, it has become clear that they have other goods of equal value to offer their customers. Things that have sometimes been locked away inside their walls and fences. What kinds of things? Their knowledge, insight, data, accesses. Interesting that to them, accesses is considered a product. Very interesting.
Definitely.
Now the agency and the larger intelligence community have recognized they need to get every type of valuable information, or the need to get every type of valuable information from whatever source to those who can use it. And this is what's known as information sharing. This is what they see as their most important challenge post 9/11. And which is what you always hear us talking about Transformation 2.0. Transformation 2.0 was their plan to enhance the intelligence sharing between agencies. And here we go. The director has provided the vision and his Transformation 2.0 initiative.
Yeah, so if you were going to write up the subject Transformation 2.0 in these documents, this would be fantastic for that, you know, along with the other.
And as well. Yeah, in both part 1 and part 2 of the Decipher articles from the first and second batches, I covered Transformation 2.0 pretty thoroughly. It's just basically this entire idea of needing enhanced information sharing.
Definitely. And I think, yeah, and one point from that is again the fact that they don't seem to care about security, but they definitely care about opening this information up to their other agencies.
So the conversation that I wanted to have about customers is that we have been remarking over and over again about how corporate the language is in these documents, how they keep talking about customer service, how they are obsessed actually with serving their customers. And the customers are things like the Department of Energy and they have a whole bunch of economics partners and the Federal Reserve Bank and people like this. So, and then of course the military partners, the DOD, the CIA, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so we've understood that it's about money. Yeah. We've understood that the spying is economic. We know for a fact that they are spying for economic reasons and that they are making billions. They both themselves and their customers are making billions, trillions of dollars off of this information. But the way that I saw the customers and the way that I understood the relationship of the customers has substantially changed for me this week after some further research. So when we were looking through the UN stuff and we were seeing, I've got recent tweets about this, and we've done a few episodes about it now. We've seen the NSA taking direct responsibility for the content of major diplomatic speeches at the UN and also decisions made by, we learned in the last episode, by Paul Bremer when he was the US ambassador to Iraq, literally sitting in Saddam's palaces, firing the entire Iraqi defense force. And we said, and I think I even tweeted at the time, we said, we've been blaming the wrong people. We've been blaming the guys who get up and stand up and make these speeches at the UN. We've been blaming Bush. We've been blaming Colin Powell. We have been blaming Bremer. But these guys are just the faces. It's actually the system that is producing the content that they're getting up and speaking that is the problem. Well, after that, I came across some further information about the customers. So I don't think it is the NSA actually, or the system, that is the problem or the point of culpability, because I realized that in the customer information needs portal, which is where requests come into the NSA from these agencies to fulfill specific information requirements.
Yeah.
That is the orders. That's how NSA gets its orders. NSA doesn't get its orders by someone picking up the phone and saying, NSA, we need you to give us information on Iraqi WMDs so that Colin Powell can go and make some bullshit speech to the UN. That's not how it happens. These information needs requests are logged in this customer portal. And I remember saying a few weeks back, we need to start seeing some of those information needs requests. We need to be able to study and analyze them so that we can understand what it is that these customers are ordering the NSA to do for them. Now, what I came across this week is the concept that the Eye of Sauron of the NSA sucks up all of this information, and collectively that information, when they collect it all, that everything they've collected is like the spoils. It's like the treasure trove. It's like, imagine a big treasure chest with all the information stashed inside it. The customers are the benefactors of that. Yeah. They are collectively the owners, the recipients, the benefactors is really, I think, the right word. They're the benefactors of it. And what they are doing is these customers are dipping their hands into the treasure trove and pulling out chunks of treasure and then using it to make megabucks, capitalizing on it. Exactly. And so that made me understand that the culpability lies not with the guy making the speech, not with the NSA who's collected the information that's provided the content for the speech. The culpability is with the customers. Yeah. The customers of the NSA are what is driving this entire thing.
Yeah, because it's like, I mean, the basic economic principle of supply being driven by demand.
Yes, and the demand is coming from the customers.
Exactly, yeah.
And collectively, the customers are pretty much the entire US government. Yeah. And a bunch of, other corporates and whatnot. But that's where, I think you called it the deep state. Yeah. You called it the deep state, and you're right. You really were right. Collectively, they are the deep state.
Yeah, by that I meant the enmeshment, intertangling, intertwining of the corporate second party, or the corporate kind of sector with these agencies, and then the relationship there, and then the way that they together act as a customer and drive the supply of this information.
They are the centers of economic power. Yeah. For the United States, military and economic power. Whether they are private or whether they are government, it doesn't really matter when both of them, when they both have their hands in the spoils. Yeah. When they're divvying up the spoils amongst them. So to that extent, the NSA are like the bandits that steal, because this is what they're doing. All this data that they're sucking up is stolen product, is stolen property, and then they are commercializing it by selling it to these customers. So I see the NSA are like the bandits, the thieves. They steal people's private data from all over the world, but then they're doing it for their taskmasters. And their taskmasters are not just the president or just the White House or just the Department of Defense or just any one thing. The taskmasters are collectively the customers.
Definitely.
So what I would like to know personally is, what is the full customer list of the NSA?
That would be incredible to know.
And what are the information needs requests that are coming in through the information needs portal from the customers?
Yeah. Both of those would be the hugest pieces of information I think that could come out of this, definitely.
I'd also like to know, I'd like to read that business vision document for the Five Eyes, because I think that contains a lot of pieces of the puzzle, for sure.
And so if I can interpret what you're saying the way that I'm hearing you, and you check if I'm hearing.
Oh, you just cut out, Elizabeth.
Oh, sorry, my internet is a little bit unstable at the moment, and it's been telling me that it's breaking up, so let me know if I cut out. But basically the way I'm understanding what you're saying is that we've seen and we understand that how the NSA is stealing the information, and we know that they do steal the information, but what you're saying that we need to focus on and look for is the, what information they're being told to steal by the customer, and the request, and then who the customer actually is that's driving these bandits, or, the NSA.
Definitely. So I feel like the attention of the public is constantly directed towards they're like placeholders. It's the George Bush, like we're taught to hate these evil figures, right? Hate George Bush, hate Trump, blah, 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 blah. And I feel like these figures are manufactured, like their job is to take the heat.
Yeah, or Hillary, or
the focus. Their job is to be the focus of the public eye. This is their intended purpose, right? Like when you take the job of White House press secretary, you know that you're going to have to stand up and people are just going to talk shit about you and whatever. Sean Spicer knew full well that he was going to be turned into this hated figure. They always are, the press secretaries. It's the same thing with the presidents. So George Bush goes to the UN and says the horrible speech full of lies that leads to the war, and then we all hate George Bush for 10 years. But what I'm doing is I'm peeling back those like layers that are put in front of us, and I'm realizing, well, what's behind that? And I know from the NSA going, oh, well, we provided all the intelligence for that speech. Our work is so historic. That actually that speech wasn't written by George Bush. It didn't even come from George Bush's speechwriter. The content of the speech came from the NSA. And so, and that was why in the previous episode I'd said, aha, the NSA is the problem. The NSA is the problem because they came up with content. But it was after that I realized that, hang on a second, why did the NSA come up with the content? The NSA came up with the content because they were asked to come up with the content. Who were they asked to come up with the content by?
Yeah.
By an information needs request from a customer that came through the NSA's customer information portal. So then the next question is, who is the customer that made that request?
Yeah, so going with your earlier metaphor, we can see them stealing, like if you see a bandit going out the street, so we could, just like we see George Bush, and what we're not seeing is where it goes to, and so we're trying to find that out.
We're not seeing who has said, go and steal this.
Exactly.
And give it to us.
Which happens behind closed doors, metaphorically.
Oh my God, this is exactly it. It's like the cat burglar, right? NSA is like the cat burglar that comes in and steals your stuff. But who hired the cat burglar? Who told the cat burglar, we are interested in this diamond necklace, which is in this jewelry box, which is in this person's house? Who did? And the answer is the customer. The customer.
Yeah.
So who's the customer?
And we have a few of them. I mean, I think from what I've seen, we've gotten like partial lists at different times.
Yeah, the partial list. I think we actually published it from batch 3, didn't we?
I think so. I think the article I wrote of some of our final list that I think was from batch 4. It was just a small list though. And that was the one that included the Federal Reserve. If I'm mistaken, it was batch 3. I didn't intend to pull from that, but
the intercept reporting also contained partially some of that information. So Fly says there's a clip that states that there were 50 customers in 2004. That's correct. That is really good that you remember that, Fly. You're right. We did know the total amount of customers.
Which is really helpful.
We don't really know, actually, and what's just struck me is, do we know if the customers have customers themselves?
I don't know if there's a way to know that unless they mention it in the documents. But it's definitely an interesting question.
So when the customer puts in a request for information, what are they then doing with that? Are they just keeping it for themselves and using it for their own benefit, or are they then passing it on to other customers?
Are there further links on the chain of, higher tiers or whatever? Yeah.
But I feel very strongly that we need to somehow get our hands on some of those, even just a few, just to see what is the format, what is the type, what is the content of just a few of those requests. That would be absolutely priceless.
Yeah.
And then the next question that I had is who within the customer organizations, from an HR perspective, who is making those requests? Who is it that's literally sitting and doing the data entry into the NSA portal to make those requests? Be very interested to know. And then I'm wondering, it stands to reason that this process is replicated amongst the Five Eyes. So, for example, there's a famous recent case where the New Zealand government had the GCSB use the global network access to get information on competitors to the World Trade Organization directorship position that Tim Grosser, the New Zealand, I think he was Minister of Finance, Minister of something, maybe trade or finance or something. He wanted the World Trade Organization position. So the government used our spy agency's access to the global network to spy on all of the contenders for that position.
Wow.
Yeah, so I'm thinking to myself, well then, who was the customer? Was it it must have been one of the New Zealand ministries? And who put in the request? Because GCSB must also have a customer information needs portal, and all of the New Zealand ministries and New Zealand government agencies and God knows what private agencies in New Zealand must be able to log information needs requests in that portal. So I'm wondering who does it, because it's very unlikely to be a secretary. It's very unlikely to be someone, a data entry person that's doing this high level stuff. You would have to have, obviously I don't think it's the directors either. You're not going to have a government minister sitting there entering in the request into the portal. They're going to tell someone, pass the orders down the chain. But I'm really fascinated to know who is it? What position is responsible for entering in these requests?
Definitely.
I think that will tell us a lot. I feel like we will learn something about the way that this all happens and functions if we know that information.
Definitely. I agree.
I don't think it's the IT staff that are doing it. I don't think it's the administrative staff that are doing it. I don't think it's the executives that are doing it. So who is doing it?
Well, I'm hoping that as we go through into further documents, we'll find some that deal with that.
Hopefully, yeah. And then I'm also wondering what the caveats are for the use of the information. So we know that when the NSA gives information to law enforcement agencies, that it binds them from ever disclosing that NSA was the source of that. So that's where there's the famous practice where FBI then goes and uses NSA information in court that they're not allowed to tell even the court that they got that information from the NSA, and that they then have to go back and reproduce so they take something that they know, but they can't say it was from NSA. So then they go and they investigate themselves the same source that the NSA used to reproduce that information and be able to submit it to the court themselves as legitimate intelligence.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that, or you've discussed that with me before. Either way.
Yeah, and Snowden would be kicking me right now for not remembering what the actual terminology is for that, because there's a specific term for that. But
it's a logical concept. Like it makes sense.
Parallel reconstruction.
There you go.
There we go. I just got it. It's called parallel reconstruction. So they've been given information. They can't disclose that they even, that they do know it, but they can go and reconstruct that by other investigative means.
Yeah.
So it's cheating is what it is. It's literally cheating.
It's knowing the answer and having to go and show your work in a different way after you know the answer already. But
yeah. It's gaming the system. And to the detriment of the target, always to the detriment of the target.
Definitely.
Amazing. And then think about, okay, so then the next step from that is that then FBI is a customer of the NSA. Yeah. FBI is logging an information need in that customer request portal, and then NSA is fulfilling that need. FBI is taking that information, going, aha, we can't use this, and that's where the parallel reconstruction is coming from. So that's all well and good that we understand that's happening with FBI, but then what is happening with some of these other departments and these other customers?
Yeah, and I would expect that over the years, as their technology and their capabilities have, their need for that type of parallel reconstruction would have increased, because there would be more and more and more that they would be able to do, but then they would have to pretend not to be able to do and go around and all that. So,
okay, we'll get on with the documents now. But yeah, this is, for me now, the question mark is not hanging over the NSA, it's hanging over the customers.
Yeah, that makes sense. No, I think it's important that we point that out.
Yeah, I think that's the big unknown now for me.
Yeah. And yeah, as we're going to the next document, I think that's part of the reason that is as well, is because the whole mass surveillance that Snowden pointed out is the so much as far as like the soundbite takeaway point that the media went with was so much about the how the NSA was taking this information as opposed to who was driving the taking of it.
That's a brilliant point. But see, this is a process. Like we had to learn what we did about what the NSA was doing.
No, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying that's been really well established. That's all.
Yeah, definitely. People had to know what they were doing. That was extremely important, because we had no freaking idea. Back in 2011, we had no idea. No idea.
There was speculation that the government had abilities like this or capabilities like this, but I think it was stuffed under the rug as conspiracy theory. It was dismissed.
There's a difference between they could do it and they did do it.
There's a difference between speculation and evidence, for sure.
Definitely. But in the tech space, they were saying the government can do this. They weren't saying the government is doing this.
Good point. Yeah.
Yeah, so even those who knew that the government had the technical capability didn't know the practical application, the scale of it, or that it was every day, everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, big stuff. But so it's a natural process. It's taken years, and here we are.
It's a national process.
Yeah, I'm really messing with words.
Natural process, but now we are able to start digging into this. Who is really behind it? Who is behind the NSA? And the answer is the customers.
So it's boiling it down to cause and effect. We've seen the effect, now we're going after the cause, type of thing.
Very much. But I definitely feel that now the light needs to be shone on the customers.
Definitely.
They are the beneficiaries of the mass theft. They're the beneficiaries of the violation of privacy and of the constitutional violations and the violations of the law. They are the beneficiaries, and that's why we need to go after them. We need to understand how they are driving and using the NSA. So the NSA is like a service provider. This is literally my understanding that I've reached this week. It is a service provider, no more, no less. The customers are who it is providing the service to.
That makes sense.
So, I mean, this is the thing, like, even if we were to defund the NSA, even if we were to shut down the NSA, the root of the problem is not the NSA, it's the customers. The customers will find another way.
Yeah.
They will find another way. The customers are the ones that need to be dealt with.
Because it's the whole supply demand issue again. So.
Exactly.